Many workplaces and facilities generate hazardous waste. In 1976, the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, enacted the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, or RCRA. The purpose of RCRA and the amendments that have been added to it since 1976 is to help reduce the negative impact waste has had on people and the environment. When you have completed this course, you should be able to recognize the different wastes under RCRA and identify the 4 hazardous waste characteristics. You should also be able to recognize the ways to properly manage hazardous waste. Lesson 1. Different wastes under RCRA. The Resource Conservation and Recovery Act was created to protect people and the environment from hazardous wastes and ensure wastes are properly managed. Hazardous waste can run off into waterways, pollute soil and groundwater, harm sewage systems, and be harmful to human health. RCRA introduced the concept of cradle-to-grave management to ensure hazardous waste is safely managed from the time it is created until its disposal. RCRA also regulates generators and transporters, requiring waste generators to classify hazardous waste. RCRA also works to ensure waste minimization. This means that the more waste your facility generates, the more rigorous the regulations for your facility will be. As we'll see, classifying wastes can be challenging. The EPA maintains 4 main lists of hazardous wastes. Substances on one of these lists are called listed wastes. However, wastes may not be on one of the EPA lists, but still have certain hazardous characteristics. These are called characteristic wastes. There are many types of waste which are harmful, such as spent sulfuric acid or domestic sewage, but that are not regulated under RCRA. For example, nuclear waste is hazardous, but it is regulated by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission rather than the Environmental Protection Agency. To be classified as a hazardous waste under RCRA, a material must first be a solid waste. Solid waste is a legal term and is not limited to wastes that are physically solid. A solid waste can be solid, semi-solid, liquid, or be a contained gaseous material. You should assume any waste you generate is solid waste unless advised otherwise. After a waste is classified as a solid waste and found not to be exempt from RCRA, it is then checked to see if it is hazardous. Again, hazardous wastes may be either listed wastes, meaning they are on one of the EPA's 4 lists, or characteristic hazardous waste, meaning it is not on one of the 4 lists, but still has hazardous characteristics. Listed wastes are commonly found in manufacturing and industrial processes. Many are associated with specific industries, such as wood preservation and pesticide manufacturing. Listed waste can also be generated from discarded commercial products. There are more than 700 listed wastes, divided into 4 different lists: F, K, P, and U. The F list contains hazardous wastes that come from manufacturing and industrial processes. The K list contains the hazardous wastes which are from specific sectors of manufacturing. K-list wastes are considered source-specific wastes. The P and U lists contain certain unused chemicals that are being disposed. Wastes on the P list are generally more acutely hazardous than wastes on the U list. It is possible for the same chemical to have a different code depending on how the waste was generated. Solid wastes that are not classified as hazardous waste may still be classified as a different type of regulated waste. One common type is universal waste. Universal wastes include certain kinds of batteries, thermostats, and other mercury-containing equipment, fluorescent lamps, certain pesticides, and aerosol cans. These materials do have hazardous properties and were once classified as hazardous wastes, but are very common in nearly all residential, commercial, and industrial settings. The EPA created the Universal Waste Rule to encourage recycling and proper disposal of these common wastes by making it easier to do both through regulations that are less stringent and more streamlined. Used oils, both synthetic and refined from crude, are another type of waste that are not classified as hazardous, but are still subject to specific accumulation and disposal regulations under RCRA. Labeling of containers and secondary containment is still required for these wastes, and the EPA still expects the generator to send these wastes for proper disposal, reuse, or recycling.